The hospital at night always carried an eerie ambiance, something sinister lurking behind the sterile white walls and the hushed whispers of the night staff. I had been working as a nurse for years, and the night shift had become my routine. But one fateful night, everything went horribly wrong. It was a cold, moonless night, and the corridors seemed to stretch endlessly. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with malevolence. The hospital was quiet, too quiet, as if it were holding its breath, anticipating something dreadful. I was attending to my usual duties when I heard a soft, plaintive cry coming from one of the patient rooms at the far end of the corridor. My heart quickened as I recognized the room. It was room 304, the one that had been empty for weeks. How could there be a cry from within? Summoning all my courage, I approached the room, the doorknob icy to the touch. A cold breeze brushed past me as I pushed it open, and I was met with a sight that would haunt my nightmares forever. A woman, frail and pale, lay on the bed, her eyes wide with terror. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "They're here? They're all here." But the room was empty, save for her and me. I tried to comfort her, to assure her that there was no one else there, but the woman's eyes darted around, following unseen entities. I called for help over the intercom, and within moments my colleagues arrived. Together we tried to calm the woman, but her terror only grew. She shrieked as if demons were clawing at her soul, her eyes now fixated on the ceiling. That's when I saw it too. Shadows, grotesque and twisted, moved across the ceiling as if engaged in some macabre dance. They whispered foul words, words that clawed at my sanity. It was as if the very walls were closing in on us, suffocating us with their malevolence. In a panic, we rushed the woman out of the room, but the shadows followed, crawling along the walls, a writhing, living darkness. We tried to escape, but the corridors had transformed into a labyrinth, shifting and twisting, leading us deeper into the heart of the hospital. Desperation set in as we realized there was no way out. The hospital had become a nightmarish realm, a place where the laws of reality no longer applied. One by one, my colleagues succumbed to the madness, their eyes turning hollow as they mumbled incoherent words. I was the last one left, the sole witness to the hospital's descent into chaos. The woman we had tried to save was gone, her screams swallowed by the abyss. I stumbled through the ever-changing corridors, pursued by the relentless shadows, their whispers growing louder, more sinister. Finally, I found myself in room 304 once again, but this time, it was different. The walls were adorned with grotesque paintings, and the bed was occupied by a grotesque figure, a monstrous entity that bore a twisted resemblance to the woman we had tried to save. It spoke with her voice, a chilling echo of her earlier plea. "They're here," it whispered, and the room erupted in a cacophony of demonic laughter. As the laughter enveloped me, I realized that I too had become a part of the hospital's nightmare. There was no escape, no way out. The hospital at night had gone horribly wrong, and I was trapped in its eternal darkness, forever haunted by the horrors that lurked within its walls. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting eerie shadows over the abandoned hospital. The once bustling institution now stood as a decrepit relic, its windows shattered, its halls echoing with the ghosts of a bygone era. In the darkness, it whispered secrets of pain and despair, and on this particular night, those secrets would come to life. Mara had always been fascinated by the macabre, and that fascination had led her to the deserted St. Agnes Hospital. Armed with a flashlight and her insatiable curiosity, she ventured into the decaying structure, the echoes of her footsteps reverberating through the desolate corridors. As she made her way deeper into the hospital, the air grew colder, and the silence seemed to press in on her. The flickering light of her flashlight revealed peeling paint and rusted gurneys, relics of a time when this place had been filled with the sick and the dying. She couldn't help but shiver, the stories of the hospital's grim history playing in her mind like a sinister symphony. Suddenly, she heard a faint sound, a distant, mournful cry. It sent a shiver down her spine, but curiosity compelled her to follow it. The cries led her to a room, its door ajar, and a dim light flickering within. With trembling hands, she pushed the door open and gasped in horror. Inside the room, a row of rusted beds held the twisted forms of patients who had long since passed. Their eyes, milky and lifeless, stared at her accusingly. But it was the source of the cries that drew her attention. A figure dressed in a tattered hospital gown, huddled in the corner. Mara's heart pounded as she approached the figure. The patient's face was obscured by matted hair, and her bony frame trembled with each sob. "Are you okay?" Mara asked, her voice trembling. The figure slowly turned its head, and Mara's breath caught in her throat. The patient's face was contorted into a grotesque mask of agony, her eyes bloodshot and filled with torment. She reached out a skeletal hand, her nails like claws, and whispered, "Help me." Mara stumbled back, her flashlight flickering. Panic washed over her as she fumbled to find the exit. The corridors seemed to shift and elongate, trapping her in a labyrinth of horror. The cries grew louder, echoing through the hospital, as if the very walls were weeping. Desperation drove Mara to run blindly through the maze-like halls, but with each turn, the hospital seemed to change, its layout defying logic. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, and ghostly whispers filled her ears. Finally, she burst into what appeared to be an operating room. The room was bathed in an unnatural crimson light, and in the center lay an operating table. Strapped to the table was a grotesque figure, its body a patchwork of stitched-together limbs and organs. It writhed and convulsed, its mouth contorted in a silent scream. Mara's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. She could feel the presence of malevolent entities closing in on her. In the blackness, she heard the voices of the tormented patients, their cries merging into an unholy chorus. As the darkness swallowed her, Mara realized that the hospital was a nightmarish realm where the boundaries between life and death had blurred. She was trapped, lost in a night gone horribly wrong, surrounded by the wailing souls of those who had suffered within these walls. And in the heart of the hospital, the figure on the operating table stirred, its eyes opening to reveal a void of infinite darkness. It reached out, its cold, clammy hand brushing against Mara's cheek, and whispered, "Join us."